Rachel Friedman. I'm Associate Dean and Chair of Tanakh at Risha Institute for Jewish Education. It's my honor to inaugurate Risha's Parashat Hashavua series this year and to share with you some thoughts on the Torah portion of Bereishit. Genesis 1, the first chapter of the book of Bereishit, recounts God's creation of the world in 6 consecutive days. In his creative activity, God employs several styles or modalities. One is creation by command. God says, "Let there be light," and there is light. A second modality is creation by some kind of activity. God made the 2 great luminaries, the sun and the moon. A final modality of creation is what we might call creation by separation. God separated the light from the darkness. God separated the upper waters from the lower waters. A question that's always intrigued me is, what modality does God use to create human beings? Does the act of creation of humanity, male and female, involve an act of separation? If we focus exclusively on the story of creation as it is recounted in Genesis 1, there's no reason to believe that the creation of human beings involves an act of separation. Genesis 1:27 states, "Vayivra Elokim et Adam b'tzalmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara oto, zachar u'nekeva bara otam." And God created humanity in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. According to Genesis 1:27, the act of creation of humanity is an act by God of creation of 2 beings, male and female, rather than a creation by separation. The simplest interpretation of this verse is that God, who is one and wholly other, created humanity in his image, B'Tselem Elokim. The image of God requires both male and female for its proper articulation. This is clear from the poetic structure of the verse. Picture in your mind, or go to your computer, or divide in writing the verse Genesis 1:27 into its 3 logical sections. And what I think you'll realize is that the verse consists of 3 parallel poetic sections. First, Vayivra Elokim et Adam b'tzalmo, and God created humankind in his image. Second, B'Tzelem Elokim bara oto, in the image of God he created him. And third, male and female, he created them. Zachar u'nekeva bara otam. Now, if you match up the parallel phrases in each section, what you'll see is that the poetic counterpart of the words B'Tzelem Elokim, the image of God, in the first 2 sections is Zachar u'nekeva, male and female, in the 3rd section. And so it is. The image of God requires both male and female for its proper expression. Therefore, God creates both genders, male and female, Zachar u'nekeva bara otam, so that humanity could be a reflection of the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God. Only then is the 6-day process of creation complete. And God saw all that he made and found it tov ma'od, very good. But the story doesn't end in chapter 1. Indeed, Genesis 1:27 describes the creation of man and woman as the creation of 2 distinct units. But the Garden of Eden story in chapter 2 conveys a very different impression. In Genesis 2:18, God declares, "Lo tov heyot adam levado." It isn't good for the human being to be alone. And then God proceeds to fashion beasts and birds for Adam, but Adam is still lonely. He doesn't find an ezer kenegdo, a fitting helper. Thereafter, the text tells us, "Vayapel Hashem Elokim tardema al hadam, vayisham, vayikach achat mitzalotav, vayiskor basar tachtena, vayiven Hashem Elokim et hatzela, asher lakach min ha'adam leisha, vayivieha el ha'adam." So God cast a deep sleep upon the man, and while he slept, God took one of his silaot, and note, I am not translating the word silaot, and cast a deep sleep. God took one of the silaot of the man and closed up the flesh at that spot. And God fashioned the tsela that he had taken from the man into a woman and brought her to the man. In Genesis 2, the creation of woman clearly involves an act of separation. Now, how might we harmonize the competing accounts of the creation of human being in Genesis 1 and 2? A midrash in Bereishit Rabbah, which is echoed in the Talmud and by the medieval commentators Rashi and Ibn Ezra, harmonizes the accounts of creation of humanity in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 by positing a process of creation by separation. The midrash suggests that Genesis 1:27 describes the initial creation of the first human being as an androgynous creature, both male and female. The midrash rejects the common translation of the word tsela in Genesis 2:21 as denoting a rib, which would lead to the interpretation, and God took one of Adam's ribs and enclosed it in flesh. Instead, the word tsela is defined as a side, as it is 38 other times in the Bible. Genesis 2, then, recounts the continuation of the process of creation of humanity that already began in Genesis 1. God separates the female side of the first human being from the male side and encloses it with flesh, thereby building the first woman. In this classical midrashic approach, God indeed creates man and woman through the modality of separation. Just as God separates light from darkness, so too God separates woman from man. What existential lessons can we learn from this midrashic perspective on the creation of man and woman? Why might God choose to create an androgynous creature, only later to divide it into man and woman? Perhaps the midrash seeks to differentiate God's ideal created world from the reality of human experience. Genesis 1 describes the ideal state of God's creation. In this ideal realm, one lone creature that reflects the image of God, represented by the androgynous Adam, may be Tov Ma'od, very good. Genesis 2, however, describes the beginning of the human condition. The message of Genesis 2, then, is that humanity may be a reflection of God, but it's not God. In the human realm, it is lo tov, not good, for a human being to be alone. In summary, the creation of man and woman as one being in chapter 1 of the book of Genesis alludes to the height of human potential, creation in the image of God. But the story of Adam and Eve in Genesis 2 is about the depth of human need and loneliness. Lo tov heyot ha'adam levado. Where does all this leave us? How might we translate our Torah study today into our daily lives? The Torah is not only about legal rules, but about ideals. The ideals to which all of us must aspire, to create a society that reflects the Tzelem Elokim, the image of God. It's appropriate, therefore, that Sefer Bereishit begins with narratives about human ideals and human relationships. Vayivra Elokim et Adam b'tzelmo, b'tzelem Elokim bara oto, zachar u'nekeva bara otam. Human beings can only reach their maximum potential in a culture of partnership and mutual respect between man and woman. What could be a more fitting testament to this eternal value than the very stories we read of the first women and men in Sefer Bereishit? May each of us aspire to incorporate this lesson into our lives. Shabbat Shalom.